So welcome back to my channel for part two of a story that where a girl has not seen the world for 15 years and she's seeing it for the first time. So let's get to it.
He often told me about his family, and I would tell him about my home under the ground and Coco. One day, when Sharon wasn't around, we were sitting in the lounge watching TV. Billy suddenly stopped at one channel. Sharon and David were on TV, and she had my paintings in the background.
Oh my gosh!
By now, I knew enough
She had
English
her
to understand
paintings!
every single word. There she was, saying she couldn't believe people had fallen in love with her art overnight.
Her art.
She sighed and said, "I'm so busy painting, I've been barely eat." When they started mentioning the prices, my jaw dropped. I had started to understand the concept of money by now, and it seemed she was making a lot of it. Just then, David took Sharon's hand and said he was so happy to be with someone as beautiful and talented as her.
Oh.
He couldn't be prouder of her amazing work. I was heartbroken.
Ooh, so David's not as generous of a character as he makes himself out to be to Karen. So we find out that these two people have been scamming these kids, using them as free labor, and then selling their paintings for ginormous amounts of money. Ooh, and Karen's now pretty pissed off. Seems like she's kind of getting the concept of, like, hey, this is my work. This isn't fair that these people are selling it for huge amounts of money like this. This money should be mine. Seems like she's kind of getting the hang of it for having been out of civilization for so long. She's thinking, what you doing with my work?
I couldn't believe David had made such a fool of me. Billy was furious too. He said he couldn't let these people go on like this, and we should make a plan to escape. I was ready to go. Billy said, "Soon, you and I will be out of here for good." "Yes, and Coco, of course," I replied eagerly. He slowly nodded. We were struggling to come up with our escape plan, but after a few days, an opportunity presented itself. David was away, and Sharon had badly sprained her ankle that morning wearing her ridiculously high heels. Billy snuck up to me and whispered his plan to me quickly. Sharon was sitting in the lounge with her leg up on the table when I burst in and collapsed on the floor, screaming and holding onto my stomach. Sharon limped over and asked me what was wrong, but I just kept screaming and pointing. Just then, Billy came running in and said in fake panic, "It might be her appendix. She has to be taken to the hospital immediately." Sharon cursed under her breath. She started limping towards her car keys, but Billy quickly said, "I don't think it would be safe for you to drive with that foot. I can take her." Sharon looked at him with some doubt. Billy gave her a small smile and said, "I've worked with you for years, Sharon. You can trust me." She smiled back and handed Billy the keys to David's car. He picked
Oh,
put me in the car,
he's like, you can
and
trust me.
took off towards the hospital. About 3 minutes down the road, he pulled over and we started celebrating. This was way easier than we had thought. That's when we saw Sharon furiously driving up behind us,
Oh,
sprained ankle and all. Billy saw her first in the rearview mirror. Well, 3 minutes is a long
so close.
and she looked mad. Billy turned the car back on and took off like a rocket. It was a wild chase for a while, with him taking turn after turn, hoping to lose Sharon. But she gained on us and tried to run us off the road. I could just feel her eyes burning into me. We raced through a red light with Sharon hot on our tail. Slam! Another car hit the passenger side of her car. Billy pulled over to the side of the road, horrified. She looked like she was uninjured, but her car was a wreck. We sped away from the scene.
Ooh, what a close getaway. Oh my God. And that's Sharon. Oh my God. She's just like on them like that. Holy cow. She's got everything under her fingertips, like every single pulse on these kids.
Sharon was even more dangerous than we thought. We called 911 and told them everything, all about her operation and the forced labor in the house. They said they would be going to the house to investigate, so we headed straight back to the house to meet them. In no time, the police showed up and raided the place. They saw everything they needed to know. As we were getting out of there, I saw Coco waving at me from across the road. Thank God! I had been wondering where she'd gone. I asked Billy to stop the car. "That's Coco!" I yelled excitedly. "She's there!" He looked around and said, "No, she's not."
Oh!
"She's right there, Billy," I said impatiently. Billy became silent for a few moments. Then he said, "Karen, you've told me all about Coco, and I know you talked to her, but you have to know the truth. She isn't real. His words hit me as hard as the other car had hit
Oh.
Sharon. What was he talking about?
Oh.
What do you mean? Of course she's real. Karen,
What do you
there is
mean?
nobody there. I've never lied to you about anything. Why would I lie to you about this? Tears started pouring down my
Oh.
cheeks. She's been my best friend forever. I've known her for years and years. Billy asked me.
Oh my gosh.
Has she changed
Sounds like a
at all
case of
in the
trauma.
past years? That's when it hit me. My best friend was still as tiny as when I had first met her. I had grown so much taller and bigger, but she had always looked like she was 5 years old. I started sobbing, and Billy hugged me tight.
Oh, so this Coco. Oh my god. I actually thought it was her sister, but the whole time it was just her imaginary friend who she's now outgrowing. I think now I think maybe she used Coco as a coping mechanism, a way to get her past the lonely days when she was stuck in the mansion. And it was just somebody that she created to get her through and to help her cope and to help her, deal with the loneliness and to have somebody to talk to. So she made up this character. But now in the real world, she's finding out that this character isn't real after all.
He said he was my best friend now, and he would always stick by my side. I cried into his shoulder,
Aw,
and when I looked up, Coco was leaving.
Billy's
This
now
time,
the
I had a
best friend.
feeling she was leaving for good. Not long after that, David and Sharon were behind bars, and I received all the money from my paintings. I was rich enough to afford a small place for Billy and myself. We must
Ooh.
realize soon enough that
She
the money
rich
comes
now.
her as a little more than friends. Once word got out that I was the actual artist, I started getting phone calls to be on popular TV shows. Of course, my incredible life story about growing up alone in the
Seth
isolated
Meyers, too.
as well. I became instantly famous. When I thought life was perfect, I received a letter in the mail. I didn't recognize the name. I opened it up, and it was a handmade card. And to my shock, the picture on the front was the image of a room I had painted in the mansion. I just stared at it and started to shake as I opened it up. Billy asked me what was wrong, and I told him to read it out to me. Dear Karen, your real name is Genevieve. I'm Hannah, and I took care of you when you were growing up in that mansion. As Billy read the letter out loud, I couldn't believe my ears. It turned out that my parents had both been artists as well. My mother was a painter, and my father was a mad architect. The isolated mansion was his greatest masterpiece. He had brought my mom to live there with him. Apparently, after I was born, my mom lost her artistic touch and was no longer the same as she once was. She became bitter and envious of other artists, and she blamed me. She just left one day.
Ooh, So we find out that her mother is actually not very supportive of her. Ooh, dang, what an unsupportive mom. Like, you just didn't want your kid as soon as she was born.
Heartbroken and desperate to find her, he would leave me in the mansion with Hannah to go look for her. But Hannah was not allowed to ever show herself to me. He wanted me to stay in isolation, hidden from the world. She just had to make sure I had plenty of food and water and that I was well.
Ooh, that's creepy. There's cameras everywhere.
And she would watch me off.
Oh, look at her. They left her in a disheveled state.
His trips became more frequent, and he was staying away longer. Then one day, he just didn't come back. Hannah says she found out years later that he had died in a car accident. But then I had been growing up in isolation for quite some time, and Hannah decided to honor his wish and not reveal herself. But when she heard about where I was now, she wanted to tell me the truth about my past. I was already in complete shock after hearing the story. But what came next shook me to the core. Hannah said she wished she could tell me more about my mother. All she remembered was that she was the most beautiful woman she had ever seen, and her name was Sharon.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. What a story. Like, wow. So her mother was Sharon all along. Her mother was evil. Did her mother even know that that was her kid that she was torturing and using as free labor? Whoa, what a twist in the story. Like, I never would have thought, and I don't think Karen would have thought. I guess Karen, Sharon, that's how she named her kids. Like, I'm Sharon, you're going to be Karen. Oh, wow. And her dad, like, yeah, I guess he was so heartbroken that he just was like, yeah, I'm going to die of heartbreak. But I mean, like, I guess at least she was taking care of her kid, at least living in the same house as her. But yeah, no, she was pretty nasty. Like, she was yelling at her and screaming at her and throwing tantrums. Yeah, she gave her like half a cookie when she did well. Wow. Yeah, no, she was a terrible mother. All right. Thanks for joining me for part 2. That was an unexpected twist. I never saw that coming. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.